The Viserion diplomatic vessel Glory of Understanding dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Sol system. With all the grace and ceremony befitting a first contact mission from the Galactic Confluence ambassador, Thelanara stood on the bridge of her ship and watched the blue-green world called Earth grow larger on the viewing screen before her. She had performed this duty 43 times before across her long career, and each time brought the same mixture of excitement and responsibility that came with greeting a new species into the galactic community. The Confluence had detected humanity's radio signals decades ago and had been monitoring their development ever since. They were a young species just beginning to reach beyond their homeworld with primitive fusion drives and basic colony ships. Saw the patterns matched previous successful contacts. Tool users who had achieved atomic theory and were experimenting with faster-than-light mathematics. Thalan's second-in-command Pelver approached with his data tablet glowing softly in his four-fingered hands. "Ambassador, the preliminary scans show this species has developed remarkably quickly," he said with a hint of concern in his melodic voice there. "Technological advancement has accelerated dramatically in just the past 50 cycles." Thelanara nodded knowingly, because rapid development was common among species approaching the threshold of interstellar capability. "Have you prepared the standard first contact packages?" she asked. "Yes, Ambassador," Pelver confirmed while tapping through screens on his tablet. "Trade agreements, cultural exchange programs, technology sharing protocols, and the demilitarization guidelines for Confluence membership. All translated into their primary languages using their own radio broadcasts as reference." The ambassador smiled because this was the part she loved most about her work in 12,000 years. The Galactic Confluence had perfected the art of peaceful integration. Every species followed roughly the same path. Discover fire, then tools, then agriculture, then industry, then space travel, then contact violence. And warfare were primitive evolutionary holdovers that civilized species outgrew once they understood the benefits of cooperation. The Confluence existed as proof that thousands of different species could coexist in harmony without conflict. What Thelanara did not know, and could not have known, was that 3 weeks earlier, an unknown hostile force had attacked humanity's first extrasolar colony. The settlement called New Perth had been home to 2.3 million human colonists who had traveled 5.7 light-years from Earth to build a new world around the star. Ross 128. The attack had been swift and merciless. Orbital bombardment from an unidentified fleet had turned the colony's 3 continents into molten glass. Not a single colonist survived. No warning had been given, and no communication attempted. The attackers simply appeared, fired their weapons, and vanished back into the dark between stars. Earth's military command had gone to the highest alert level in human history. Defense satellite had been activated, and every warship recalled to home system. Civilian shipping had been suspended, and orbital stations converted to military outposts practically overnight. United Earth government had issued secret orders to all shipyards. Just learned the most terrifying lesson any species could learn. They were not alone in the universe, and something out there wanted them dead. When Thelanara's diplomatic fleet emerged from FTL, travel near Earth's orbital space, the response was immediate, and overwhelming alarms screamed across every military installation from Luna Base to the orbital defense platforms ringing. Earth's Equator Admiral Sarah Chen was in the command center at Pacific Military Headquarters when the alien vessels appeared on her screens. "Contact," shouted Lieutenant Park from his sensor station while his hands flew over the controls. "Multiple unknown vessels just dropped in system. Bearing 347, Mark 12 distance, 400,000 kilometers. In closing, Admiral Chen felt her stomach clench because this was at the things that killed New Perth had come for Earth Sound General Quarters. She ordered in a voice that cut through the sudden chaos of the command center. "Launch all ready fighters and get me firing solutions on every contact signal home. Fleet to converge on those coordinates immediately, ma'am." Park called out while studying his readouts with growing confusion. "The unknowns are broadcasting on multiple frequencies. There. Not showing hostile intent after New Perth. I don't care what they're broadcasting." Chen snapped back. "Those could be targeting signals for all we know. Keep weapons hot and maintain defensive posture." Within hours, the Confluence diplomatic vessels found themselves surrounded by 70 warships of Earth's. Home fleet fighters buzzed around the alien vessels like angry wasps while targeting lasers. Painted the diplomatic ships from a dozen different angles aboard the Glory of Understanding. Ambassador Thelanara watched the human military response with growing bewilderment. "Why are they threatening us?" she asked Pelver, who looked equally confused. "We broadcast friendship protocols in all their major languages. Perhaps this is a ceremonial." Honor Guard Pelver suggested hopefully some species have elaborate greeting rituals. But something about the way the human ships moved with their weapons clearly active in their formations, designed for overlapping fields of fire, suggested this. Was not ceremony back on Earth? The United Earth government convened an emergency session to decide humanity's response. President Alina Vasquez sat at the head of a table surrounded by military advisors, intelligence chiefs, and the hastily assembled First Contact Committee. "What do we know?" she demanded. General Marcus Webb pulled up holographic displays showing the alien vessel's 7 ships, ma'am, he reported grimly. "Unknown configuration, but our sensors detect no obvious weapon systems there. Broadcasting what our linguists believe are peaceful greetings." "After New Perth, do we trust that?" asked Director Zhao from Intelligence. "This could be a ruse to lower our guard before a second strike," offered Dr. Sarah Kim from the newly formed Xenology Division. "They might be genuinely peaceful and have no connection to the New Perth attack." The debate raged for hours while the standoff in orbit continued. Finally, President Vasquez made her decision. "We respond cautiously," she declared. "Invite them to formal negotiations, but keep them under guard at all times. If they truly want peace, they'll accept our security measures. And if they're hostile," General Webb asked, "then we show them that Earth defends its children," Vasquez replied with steel in her voice. The message went up to the Glory of Understanding, where Thelanara received humanity's response with relief. "They've agreed to meet," she told her crew. "Happily prepare the delegation." This is going exactly as expected, but as her ship began moving toward Earth's designated meeting coordinates, surrounded by dozens of armed human warships, Thelanara felt a small worry growing in her mind. Something about this species felt different from the others. The way they moved. The way they moved. The way they watched. The way their weapons never stopped tracking her ship for the first time in her 43 successful first contacts. Ambassador Thelanara wondered if perhaps the confluence had miscalculated. The meeting took place aboard Orbital Station Unity, which hung in geosynchronous orbit above the Pacific Ocean. Ambassador Thelanara materialized in the transport beam with Pelver and 3 other diplomats from various confluence species. The moment they appeared in the designated arrival chamber, they found themselves facing 20 armed human soldiers in full combat armor. Each soldier carried what were unmistakably weapons, and those weapons were not ceremonial. "Welcome to Earth," said a tall human woman in a formal dark suit who stepped forward with her hands carefully visible and empty. "I am Secretary General Chen Lin of the United Earth Government." Thelanara performed the traditional Viserian greeting by extending both arms with palms upward in a gesture of peaceful intent. "I am Ambassador Thelanara of the Galactic Confluence, and we bring greetings from 47 civilized species." Secretary General Chen studied the aliens carefully while trying to hide her tension. Lead alien was tall and slender, with pale blue skin and large eyes that seemed to shimmer with colors that had no name in human languages. The others represented different species, but all shared an air of refined sophistication that somehow made their presence feel even more threatening to Chen's military-trained instincts. "Please follow me to the conference chamber," Chen said formally. "Your security requirements are understood, but we ask that your guards remain outside the negotiation room." Thelanara looked puzzled and gestured at her unarmed delegation. "We have no guards, Secretary General," she replied. "The Confluence does not employ military personnel for diplomatic missions." The human diplomats exchanged glances that the ambassador could not quite interpret. "Then who are they?" asked General Webb while pointing at the alien delegation. "We are the diplomatic team," Pelver explained patiently. "Scientists, cultural liaisons, and trade negotiators." Now it was the humans' turn to look confused, because in their experience, anyone representing their species in potential hostile territory came with heavy security. The conference room was large and circular, with a table of polished composite material at its center. Windows showed the curve of Earth below, with clouds swirling over blue oceans. Human guards stood at every entrance with weapons held ready. Thalanora found the display disturbing, but attempted to proceed professionally. "We have much to discuss," she began, once both delegations were seated. "The Galactic Confluence welcomes humanity to the greater community of civilized species. Before we discuss membership," interrupted Admiral Chen, who had insisted on being present at the negotiations, "we need answers about attack," she repeated carefully. "The Confluence does not attack anyone, Admiral Chen. We have maintained absolute peace for 12,000 years. 3 weeks ago, something," Chen said while activating a holographic display that showed surveillance footage from the final moments before. "New Perth died, 2.3 million civilians were killed without warning. You appeared in our system shortly after the Confluence delegation watched the footage with visible. Her orpulver skin changed color to a deep purple that his species displayed when experiencing strong emotion. "This is barbaric," Thalanora whispered, while her large eyes reflected the images of destruction. "I assured you the Confluence had nothing to do with this atrocity then. Who did?" demanded Director Zhao. "We have no knowledge of this incident," the ambassador replied. "Honestly, in Confluence space, war does not exist. Species do not attack each other. Violence of this scale has not occurred in recorded history." The human delegation sat in stunned silence because the implications were staggering. "Either these aliens were lying, or they were dangerously," said slowly while leaning forward in her chair, "that in 12,000 years across 47 species, no one has ever fought a war. War is a primitive evolutionary response," Thalanora explained, "as if teaching children a basic concept. Species evolve beyond such destructive behaviors. Once they understand the benefits of cooperation, the Confluence exists as proof that violence is not necessary for survival. You're either incredibly lucky, or you've never met a real threat." The ambassador bristled slightly at the suggestion. "We have encountered many species, General, and all have joined our peaceful community. Perhaps humanity simply needs time to understand our ways." Over the next 3 days, the negotiations continued, but the gulf between human and Confluence thinking seemed to widen rather than narrow. The aliens could not understand why humanity maintained such massive military forces. Humans could not comprehend how any species could survive without the ability to defend itself. Then came the moment that changed everything. On the 4th day of negotiations, Thalanora presented what the Confluence considered their most generous offer. "The Galactic Confluence invites Earth to join our community," she announced with obvious pride. "Membership brings access to advanced technology, cultural exchanges, and protection under Confluence law." The human delegation leaned forward with interest, because this sounded promising. "What are the terms?" asked Secretary General Chempelver, activated his data tablet, and began reading from the standard membership agreement. "New members must demonstrate their commitment to peace by reducing military expenditure to 0.01% of gross planetary product within 5 standard years." The room went very quiet. "You want us to disarm?" Admiral Chen said flatly. "To demilitarize," Thalanora corrected gently. "The Confluence maintains minimal security forces for emergency response, but weapons of war are unnecessary in civilized space." "How minimal?" asked Director Zhao. "Current Confluence members collectively maintain approximately 1 security vessel per 10 billion citizens," Pelver replied. "Earth's current ratio of military vessels to population is approximately 1 per 3 million. We are over-militarized by a factor of 3,000. President Vasquez stood up slowly, and her movement drew every eye in the room. "Let me understand this correctly," she said, in a voice that had gone dangerously calm. "You want us to destroy 99% of our military capability? This would be performed gradually over 5 years," Thalanora assured her while missing the warning signs in the president's tone. "And this is a requirement, not a suggestion," Vasquez continued. "For membership, yes," the ambassador confirmed. "New members must demonstrate commitment to Confluence principles, peace through shared vulnerability." President Vasquez looked at her military advisors, then at the alien delegation, then back at the beautiful planet turning slowly below the station. "These negotiations are concluded," she announced formally. "Earth declines your offer of membership." Thalanora stood in shock because in 43 Previous first contacts, no species had ever refused Confluence membership. Perhaps you need time to consider, she began. We've considered General Webb interrupted. While also standing, you want us defenseless in a galaxy where something just killed 2 million of our people. It's not peace, Ambassador. That's suicide. The human delegation filed out of the conference room, leaving the Confluence team sitting. In confused silence, what just happened? Asked one of the junior diplomats. Thela stared at the empty chairs across from her and felt the first cold touch of doubt, I believe. She said slowly that we may have badly misunderstood this species. The Galactic Forum existed at the heart of Confluence space, where 12 ancient species had first met to end their wars and forge lasting peace. Orbited a stable yellow sun, similar to Earth's own star, and consisted of massive orbital platforms. Civilization Ambassador Thelanara had returned to the Forum after her failed mission to Earth, and now sat in the council chamber explaining what had happened. Humans refused membership, she reported to the assembled representatives, while feeling the weight of failure for the first time in her career. They view our demilitarization requirements as an unacceptable security risk. Council Speaker Zareth of the ancient progenitor species regarded the ambassador with concern from his elevated platform. Did you explain that we have maintained perfect peace for 12,000 years? He asked. In his deep, resonant voice, I explained extensively, Thelanara. Confirmed, but the humans recently suffered an attack on one of their colonies. They believe the galaxy is hostile, and our peaceful nature makes us either complicit or naive. Murmurs spread through the council chamber because the concept of species attacking each other belonged to ancient history. Perhaps they need more time, suggested Representative Kelvin from the Archivist's young species often struggle with abandoning their violent heritage. Or perhaps, offered Representative Talreese. From the Harmonics, we should send a larger delegation to demonstrate Confluence unity. The council debated for hours about how to handle Humanitino. Species in 12,000 years had refused membership, and the council had no protocols for this. Confluence civilization, in all its glory surely, seeing thousands of species living in harmony would convince them that peace was possible. The invitation went out through the diplomatic channels to Earth with formal coordinates and detailed contact, shouted the sensor operator aboard Defense Platform 7 while staring at readings that made no sense, multiple vessels emerging from FTL. How many? Asked Platform Commander Jexalthay. Sensor operator checked his instruments, then checked again because the numbers couldn't be right. 300 large vessels. 50,000 small craft. Total mass reading is off the scale. Commander Jexel felt his blood run cold because those numbers described an invasion fleet. Sound the alarm. He ordered to alert the council immediately. This is a military emergency. Across the forum platforms, panic erupted as species that had not seen war in millennia confronted their worst nightmare. The human fleet hung in space like a dark constellation. Of lethal intentage, Dreadnought dwarfed anything the Confluence had built because peaceful species didn't need massive warships. The escort vessels moved in precise formations that spoke of military discipline and combat readiness. Every sensor showed active weapon systems and charging power. Cores aboard, the indomitable Admiral Shun stood on the bridge and surveyed the Confluence Forum through the main view screen. Orbital platforms were beautiful in their elegant design. They spoke. Hanging vulnerable in space, ma'am, said Captain Rodriguez carefully. Aye. Steady, maintain defensive posture. She ordered all ships hold position. Broadcast our message on all frequencies. The communications officer activated the transmission while hoping the translation protocols worked correctly. This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Earth Forces commanding the First Fleet. Oh. The message began in a dozen different languages. Earth's delegation has... In the council chamber, Ambassador Thelanara watched the transmission with growing horror. They think this is a diplomatic mission, she whispered to Pelver, who stood beside. Representative rushed to the chamber, while outside the human fleet maintained its position. What are we facing? Demanded Representative Curtin. From the warriors who, despite their name, had not fought actual wars in 10,000 years. Analysis shows 300 capital ships, reported the military consultant, who normally spent his time planning ceremonial displays. Each mounts weapons capable of planetary bombardment. The escort vessels carry enough firepower to sterilize multiple star systems. The humans have brought enough military force to conquer half the confluence. The chamber erupted in chaos. Some representatives demanded immediate surrender. Others called for activating the custodian protocols, which were ancient automated defense systems that hadn't been maintained in millennia. Few species simply began evacuating their representatives from the forum, order bellowed. Zareth, while activating sonic amplification, we will not panic like primitives. What do the humans want? Thelanara stepped forward with her legs shaking. They believe they are here for diplomatic negotiations, she explained. This is their idea of a diplomatic escort. The council stared at her in disbelief. Why would anyone bring warships to a peace conference? Asked Representative Velkar from the merchants. Because, said a new voice from the back of the chamber, they don't trust us, researcher. Kaivan pushed through the crowd of representatives. He was young for a confluence researcher and specialized in what most considered the morbid study of pre-civilized warfare. The humans suffered an attack before we contacted them, he continued. While bringing up holographic displays, from their perspective we appeared immediately after 2 million of their people died. Then we demanded they disarm. Now we invite them deep into our territory. They think this is a trap. Understanding began to dawn across the council chamber. They're not invading, Thelanara said slowly. They're defending themselves against us. The irony was staggering. The confluence prided itself on 12,000 years of perfect peace, now the most peaceful civilization in the galaxy faced a massive military fleet, because a new species interpreted that peace as either deception or weakness. We must respond, insisted Zareth. But how do we explain to a species armed for war that we mean them no harm back aboard? The indomitable, the waiting, continued. Admiral Chen watched her tactical displays while hoping she hadn't just started an interstellar war. Ma'am, called the communications officer. We're receiving a response. The message appeared on screen. An ambassador. Thelanara's face filled the display. She looked tired and frightened and very, very confused. Admiral Chen, she began carefully, the Galactic Confluence welcomes Earth's delegation. We apologize for any misunderstanding. We did not expect such a large military presence. We brought sufficient forces to ensure our security. Chen replied formally. If your intentions are peaceful as claimed, then you have nothing to fear from our presence. Thelanara glanced off screen at someone, then looked back. The council requests a meeting to discuss how we might proceed. They ask that you send a small delegation aboard the forum for face-to-face negotiations. Chen considered this carefully. Sending people onto alien platforms could be a trap, but refusing would confirm Confluence fears that humanity came to conquer. I will come personally, she decided, along with 10 others. But understand, Ambassador, my fleet remains on high alert. If anything happens to my delegation, my orders are clear. She didn't need to finish that sentence. The 300 dreadnoughts floating in space made the threat obvious. Understood, Admiral. Thelanara replied quietly. I will personally guarantee your safety. The channel closed, and Chen turned to her command. Staff, prepare a shuttle, she ordered, and someone find me a xenopsychologist. We're about to have the most important conversation in human history, and I want to understand what we're dealing with. In the council chamber, the representatives waited nervously outside. 300 human dreadnoughts maintained their ominous vigil. The Galactic Confluence. It spent 12,000 years perfecting the art of peaceful coexistence. Now they were about to learn whether that peace could survive contact with a species that believed survival required strength. The next few hours would determine whether humanity joined the galactic community, or whether the galaxy was about to experience its first war in recorded history. The shuttle carrying Admiral Chen and her delegation docked with the main forum platform while 300 dreadnoughts watched from their positions in space. Soon stepped through the airlock with her hand near her sidearm and found herself facing Ambassador Thelanara and a full honor guard of Confluence. Representatives, welcome, Admiral, Thelanara said formally. I hope we can resolve this situation peacefully. So do I, Ambassador, Chen replied while studying the assembled aliens carefully. Because my fleet has orders to level this entire platform if I don't return safely. The bluntness of the statement made several Confluence representatives flinch. Valera maintained her composure, but Chen could see the fear in her large eyes. No harm will come to you, the ambassador assured her. Violence has no place in Confluence space. Chen followed the alien delegation through corridors of elegant design that confirmed what her tactical analysis had already told her. Nothing here was built for. Defensive resurface spoke of species that had forgotten what it meant to fight. The council chamber impressed Chen with its scale and grandeur. Representatives from dozens of species filled tiered seating that rose in concentric circles around a central platform where Council Speaker Zareth waited. Admiral Chen. Zareth greeted her in a voice that resonated with authority. The Galactic Confluence thanks you for agreeing to meet. We hope to understand why Earth felt it necessary to arrive. With such overwhelming military force, Chen walked to the center platform with her military bearing on full display. You invited us here after demanding we disarm, she stated clearly. Our colony was attacked weeks before your arrival, you tell us. Violence doesn't exist in your civilization, but something killed 2 million of our people. From Earth's perspective, this looks like either an elaborate trap or dangerous ignorance. Murmurs spread through the council chamber at her direct accusation. We had nothing to do with the attack on your colony, Thelanara insisted. The confluence does not engage in violence, then who did? Chen demanded. The council chamber fell silent because no one had an answer. Finally, researcher Kaivan stood from his seat. In the lower tiers, may I speak, council speaker, he asked for Malazarth, gestured permission. Kivin made his way to the central platform while carrying data tablets loaded with research. I have studied this question since learning of the human colony attack, he began, and I believe I know what happened. He activated holographic displays showing star charts of the region beyond confluence borders. There is a region of space that confluence vessels avoid, he explained. We call it the dead zone because no signals emerge from it. For 12,000 years, we have maintained our borders and never ventured into this region. Why? Asked Chenkiv, hesitated, then continued. Because something lives there, species we call the Vorsia. They are nomadic raiders who occasionally probe confluence borders. The council chamber erupted in protest. We do not discuss the Vorsia, representative, Talri shouted. They are not a legitimate topic for council proceedings. Why not? Chen demanded, while turning to face the council. Because acknowledging them would mean acknowledging that your perfect peace is a lie. The accusation hung in the air like a physical weight. Zareth raised his hand for silence. Continue, researcher Kivin, he said. Quietly explain to our human guests what we have chosen not to speak of. Kaivan pulled up more data, showing attack patterns dating back thousands of years. The Vorsia raid our frontier regions every few decades, he explained. They take resources, destroy settlements, and vanish back into their territory. The confluence response has always been the same. Abandon the frontier regions and retreat inward. Our peace has been maintained not through strength, but through strategic withdrawal. Chen felt cold rage building in her chest. You abandoned your own people to raiders. We evacuate endangered regions before attacks occur, Representative Kelvin protested. Casualties are minimized. Minimized, Chen repeated, with ice in her voice. How many confluence citizens have died to these Vorsia? Over 12,000 years. Kivin checked his research files. Approximately 400 million across all species. The number hit the council chamber like a physical blow. 400 million. Deaths hidden behind the facade of perfect peace, the Vorsia found. Earth's colony, because we had just begun expanding beyond our home system, Chen concluded we were visible and vulnerable. And they treated us exactly as they treat your frontier regions, except we don't abandon our colonies, we defend them. Or try to, she added bitterly. But you arrived too late, Thelanara said with genuine sympathy. Chen nodded while grief and anger warred in her chest, and then you showed up demanding we disarm, so we could join your civilization that maintains peace by running away. The council representatives had no response because the human was right there. Perfect peace had been bought with strategic cowardice. There must be another way, Zareth said heavily. Perhaps the humans can teach us? What happened next was unprecedented in confluence history. A young human stepped forward from Admiral Chen's delegation. Dr. Kenji Yamamoto was a xenopsychologist who had spent the entire journey to the forum studying confluence culture and behavior patterns. Council Speaker, if I may, he said. Respectful Izarth gestured for him to speak. The confluence and humanity represent two different evolutionary responses to the problem of survival, Doctor. Yamamoto explained while bringing up comparative cultural analysis. You evolved in a dense region of space where many species developed simultaneously. Cooperation was essential because conflict would destroy everyone. Earth evolved in isolation. Where the only threats came from our own environment and each other, we learned survival through strength and adaptation. He paused to let that sink in. Both approaches work in their appropriate contexts, but the galaxy is larger than either of us. Realized the confluence maintains peace internally, but has no answer to external threats. Humanity knows how to fight, but lacks the diplomatic infrastructure to manage peaceful coexistence. We need each other, Representative Curtin from the Warriors stood slowly. What exactly are you proposing, human? Dr. Yamamoto looked at Admiral Chen, who nodded permission to continue. Earth cannot join the confluence under current terms, he stated clearly. We will not disarm in a galaxy where threats exists, but perhaps the confluence needs to reconsider whether absolute pacifism serves the interests of its citizens. You want us to militarize, Thelanara said with horror. I want you to stop dying, Chen interrupted. 400 million people. Ambassador, how many more before you admit that hiding doesn't work? Council Speaker Zareth rose from his seat. The council will deliberate, he announced. All delegates are dismissed, except the human representatives. The council chamber slowly emptied, until only the core council members remained with Chen and her team. What do you want from us, Admiral Zareth? Asked directly Chen. Considered carefully before responding to partnership, she finally said Earth maintains full military capability and extends protection to Confluence space in exchange. The Confluence provides technology, cultural exchange, and diplomatic infrastructure. You want to become our military representative, Towers said. We want to ensure no one else loses 2 million people, because peaceful species were too idealistic to prepare for reality, Chen corrected the Council debated for 3 days, while the human fleet maintained its vigilant. Space representatives argued about principles versus pragmatism. Some insisted that accepting human military protection would corrupt Confluence values. Others pointed out that 400 million dead citizens suggested those values might need revision. Finally, on the third day, Council Speaker Zareth called Admiral Chen back to the council chamber. The Galactic Confluence has reached a decision. He announced formally, we cannot ask humanity to disarm, given the evidence of ongoing threats. We also cannot abandon our principles of peaceful coexistence, therefore. We propose a new category of membership. Earth will become the first protectorate. Power of the Galactic Confluence, you will maintain full military autonomy and provide defensive support to Confluence space. In exchange, you receive full access to Confluence technology and civilization. Chen felt tension. She didn't know she'd been carrying release from her shoulders. The Council also agrees to resume development of defensive capabilities. Zareth continued, the warriors will be reformed. As an actual military force rather than a ceremonial guard, we can no longer pretend that wishing for peace makes it so, Ambassador. Thelanara stepped forward with tears in her large eyes. 400 million people, she said. Quietly, all those deaths, because we were too afraid to acknowledge reality. How do we live with that? By making sure it doesn't happen again, Chen replied. That's all any of us can do. The formal agreement was signed in the council chamber, with representatives from 47 species bearing witness. Humanity joined the Galactic Confluence not as a demilitarized member, but as its sword-armed, the Dreadnought fleet that had nearly sparked an interstellar war instead became the foundation of the first unified Confederation Defense Force. 3 months later, Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of the Indomitable and watched as the first joint Confederation patrol departed for the frontier. Region's human dreadnoughts flew alongside newly constructed Confluence defense platforms and formations designed by tacticians from a dozen species.